Now that we've concluded reading Brave New World, I've entered a couple videos that goes over it, some insights that I gained, and I ask questions about your opinions, and feel free to share them in the comments. I've also developed some questions or some observations, some things, food for thought. So if you have been assigned Brave New World as a class reading, some notes to keep it, for food for thought. So, a brief synopsis, as it says here. Let's recap that Bernard Marx, he felt inadequate as he was introduced. When the opportunity, when the opportunity came, um, he enjoyed having that power, that leverage, that finally that acceptance that it went right to his head, and he became arrogant by making what civilized society considered negative observations about how things ought to be. Lenina Crown, she is your stereotypical two-dimensional character. She exists for no other purpose than to exist. Um, I could be mistaken. Someone else may have a different opinion of her existence, but aside from being a floozy, she doesn't offer anything. Her emotional outbursts just keep in line with the society to which she is uh, experienced. She is that civilization that you know doesn't like Bernard Marx's critique, and her behavior, when written in more detail, seems to indicate that. John the Savage is the most critical character out of all of it. He is the outsider. He's the one that is introduced late in the novel. He is the one whose world we see through Bernard's eyes mainly, but also partially through Linda's mescal hazed eyes and Lenina's soma hazed eyes. We learn his background about what it is he had to endure, which is even in our society considered, probably even considered pretty severe. But there are arguments that would say, hey, yeah, maybe it should be more normalized to have these coming of age rituals for in within communities. But going back to these characters, um, it says the setting, futuristic world state where citizens are genetically engineered, socially indoctrinated, and pacified by drugs and entertainment. I touched on this in the other two videos of the post reading. Plot points mention the caste system, the role of technology, the use of soma, and the journey of John the Savage. I covered that in the other videos. Not as much about the caste system, except for discussing it when John threw the soma out the window in an effort to get the deltas to recognize their enslavement and to turn away from that device being used to reinforce their enslavement. So the next part would be theme analysis, individuality versus conformity. Without reservation, it is very, very clear to me that this is nothing more than a society built solely upon function and conformity. Every unit has a purpose, and every purpose has a unit. So it goes on to say discuss how the novel explores the suppression of individuality in favor of societal stability. The example, John's struggle with the norms of the world state. I would go on to even expand that to use Bernard being the outsider that he is, shown to be, uh, as an example of being ostracized. That his, you know, the alcohol in his test tube, caused him to be shorter and not quite up to the same level as Henry Foster, for example. Uh, and I would contrast Henry Foster against not just Bernard Marx, but then also later on Mustafa Mond. You can include Tomican because even he, how I read him, I wanted to use a more sniveling, uh, you know, voice. He reminds me of the guy from, uh, the Captain Marvel cartoons, that professor. Not the movie where Mark Strong plays that professor, but more the along the lines of the animated, sniveling kind of voice that he had. That's what I, envisioned Tomican being, as more of a whiny, know-it-all. But then you look at Mustafa Mond, and obviously he is more in line with Helmholtz Watson in being self-assured, confident, deep-voiced, knowing what it is that he thinks, and speaking what it is he thinks within within the conformity of their society. Whereas John the Savage knows his thoughts and speaks his thoughts without regard to those cultural bumpers. So we've got John's struggle with norms of the world state, technology and control. Examine how technology in the book serves not just to improve life, but to control it. Discuss Bokanovsky's process, hypnopedia, and the feelies. There was a comedian I heard decades ago, Stephen Wright, and he made a joke about learning Chinese in your sleep. And he goes on that it was on a phonograph record player and that the needle skipped. So he learned how to stutter in Chinese. Back to the discussion points, though. Bokanovsky, that process of essentially making buds of just one fertilized egg, instead of being one baby turning into, what was it, 96, the feelies, that I could imagine some people would actually go for that, but I my idea of involvement with techno media is to take notes on it. Yours might be just to relax and enjoy it. Maybe you're into the feelies. That's up to you. Happiness versus truth. Mustafa Mond makes that dispassionate speech about how he had to make the choice. Analyze the concept of happiness in the world state versus the painful reality John experiences. John is the main character who doesn't fit into either society, but longs for that unpredictable world. He's a man out of place and out of time. He reads Shakespeare in poverty, has the opportunity to use this knowledge that he's acquired, that is the exception, only to find that they're essentially what, like the Eloi from H.G. Wells's Time Machine, the humans that are nothing more than cattle to the underdwelling human monsters. You know, they're functional only in their competence to do their job and have sex and play. What was it, hover golf or something like that?